evening. My name is Donnie Belcher, and I am the program director here at the Anne Bancroft Foundation. And as program director, I am responsible for creating and facilitating programming like this, as well as managing our grant process. And I have been with the foundation since March. I actually started right before the pandemic, and it's been a wonderful, beautiful, wild ride. And I'm so happy to do the job that I get to do every day. So I'm going to turn over the floor now to our moderator, Jackie Hartman, and I will speak to you periodically throughout the program. I'll come back at the end to moderate the Q&A. And I actually do have actually a couple of housekeeping notes before I turn over the floor to Jackie. So please keep your audio muted unless the speaker calls on you, mainly because background noise can be a little distracting. And I don't know if anyone else is like me. I have a dog who sometimes likes to bark at the most inconvenient times. And so I'm too gonna keep myself muted when I'm not speaking and ask the same of you. And then if you have a question at any point in the program, you can use the chat feature in Zoom. It's at the bottom of your screen, likely where you control, your camera and your audio and all of that. So just ask your question there, and when we can work it into the program, we will. And then at the very end, we're gonna have a post-event survey. We really, really need you guys to complete that survey. This is one of our new program offerings, and it's very important to us that we get feedback from you so that we can improve and we can continue to do this great programming. And so it'll be maybe 4 to 5 minutes at the end. Please stay on because we're going to share the link in the chat and complete that for us. And then lastly, if you have any follow-up questions after tonight's event, you can email me directly, donnieb@annbancroftfoundation.org. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about the foundation, about tonight's panel, or any other question you may have. So with that, I'm going to turn over the floor to Jackie.
Thank you, Donnie. So I want to just reiterate what Donnie said. Welcome. And I'm so glad that you joined us this evening. And as Donnie said, I'm Jackie Hartman, and I've been with the ABF organization for about 3 years, first as a volunteer, and I've been on the board for about 2.5 years. I've also have a career in technology, and that career has spanned over 20 years. So I've seen technology roles, technology careers from a lot of different perspectives, and I'm excited to share some of that with you tonight. I'm also just a little bit nervous tonight because I'm trying something new. I have facilitated panel discussions before, but never virtually, and certainly not in my backyard. So this is new for me. And if I make some mistakes, just know that I am learning tonight. So a bit about ABF, or Anne Bancroft Foundation, before we get started. Anne Bancroft is a renowned polar explorer. And for the last 22 years, Anne Bancroft has been inspiring girls to imagine something bigger. And over that period of time, we have given more than $2 million, or just about $2 million, to girls, either in direct grants or mentorship or other development opportunities. And as Donnie said, the program that we are trying tonight is something new for us. Obviously, a lot of things have changed over the last 6 months. And with that change, Anne Bancroft Foundation is also looking to see how can we evolve our programming in order to meet girls and continue to reinforce that even despite COVID, and even more importantly now, that dreams still matter. So thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here, and I welcome your support and your attention tonight. So let's get started. I'm excited to have our 2 panelists, and we're really intentional about asking Sam and Ilana to join us tonight. They have 2 really interesting technology roles, very different, and they also have very different backgrounds. And that's one of the things that I have really valued about having a career in technology, is it can lead you in many places, create many opportunities that may be obvious or less obvious. And so we'll talk about some of that stuff tonight. So I'm going to ask Ilana to introduce yourself first, and then we'll hand it off to Sam, and then I'll ask you a first question.
Sounds good. So my name is Elena Najib. I'm actually originally from Brazil. I have been in the US for about 10 years now, maybe a little bit over that. Um, Comparing myself to Jackie, I do not have a large experience in IT. I have been in IT for almost 3 years now. My whole career actually was centered into communications. So IT is very new to me. I'm still learning. There's just so much to learn. Uh, and I'm sure it's going to take me a long time to be comfortable in IT. Um, but yeah, that's all I have for now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to say I'm so excited to be here. When Donnie, you first reached out to me, I was so inspired by the work that you're doing and the mission of this organization. And Jackie, I can't wait to just learn more about your experience over 20 years. I'm an engineer at Instagram, and I work specifically on the Explore page, so like the second tab on Instagram, and I work on the iOS app. And I've been working full time as an engineer for about 3 years now. And as Ilana said, I definitely don't feel like I have a strong grasp on things. And I think that's something that we might get to in some of the questions, but I think imposter syndrome is a very real thing in the tech industry. And I have noticed as I've gone along, again, I'm still very early in my career, but even as I've gotten to these different stages where I'm like, oh, if I can only know this much more, then I will not have it anymore. And outside of Instagram, I run a podcast called Tech Setters, like trendsetters in tech, where we interview people at the intersection of tech and other industries. Yeah.
That is awesome. Thank you. And I love your different backgrounds. And also, what I noticed in what both of you said is just this continuous mindset of learning, which is really, really important. And even though I've been doing technology stuff for a long time, every day is an adventure, and every day I am also learning. And I really see that being a critical attribute to long-term success. Whatever success means, whether that's new roles or new opportunities or travel, whatever the case might be, that mindset of curiosity and continuous learning will serve you both well. So I love that you both mentioned it. So I'm also curious, Sam and Alana, just how you came into technology. So Sam, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about the background and how you got into technology in the first place, and then let's pass that off to Alana, and then I'll share my story too.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear everyone else's stories. But a bit of my exposure was when I was in 10th grade in math class. I was learning about matrices, and my math teacher kind of just mentioned on the side that, hey, one application of these is in video games and programming. And when I was applying to colleges, I really struggled to figure out there's all these colleges in the world. I don't know where to start to do research. I was like, how can I narrow this down? And I was like, oh, well, people said like computer science is a thing. How hard could it really be? Which was a bit of a naive approach. But that helped me filter things down. And I ended up getting an internship at the Smithsonian and was working for their head of IT and did some work where I was helping build out a website for the Natural History Museum, and got to see this cool intersection of technology and history. And my second internship ever happened to be at a 3D printing fashion company that I found by just messaging someone. And I think even after both of those experiences, it had been a little bit cursory around the programming space. And it got me to the point where I was at least intrigued enough to want to push through the barrier that is the steep learning curve of computer science, which is what I've at least internalized to be, you know, that starting out, it can feel like you're never going to get to that level of knowledge where you can start to really build things that you care about. But there is sort of a bit of a plateau after you get past that initial phase of like learning a completely new language and a new way of thinking. And then I interned at Facebook and returned full-time as an engineer because I'm like really passionate about the idea that I can think of something and have the tools to make it a reality. I'm not a great artist. So programming gave me a way to convey my ideas.
That's awesome. Well, for me, I never thought I was going to be in IT at all. I always actually wanted to be a journalist. I like writing a lot. So I actually went to college for communications and I was working for a nonprofit organization for many years. I became the director of communications at some point, and my life was pretty much writing. I did annual reports and newsletters, and I was helping with fundraising. It was a pretty fun job. I was working for an organization that helped immigrants in Washington, D.C. So it was work that I really love it every day. It just so happens that my husband works for a company that is headquarters is in Minneapolis, and one day he told me we had to move. And I worked for this company in Washington, D.C. remotely for a while. And while I was here, one of my best friends, she told me that she has switched careers. She also worked for nonprofits, and she said, I'm working technology now, and I really love it. And she told me everything about, and then I was finishing my work with that previous organization, was starting to look for a new job in Minneapolis. And she got into my head. She really made her mission to make me see that I should change careers, and tax was so cool. And I started researching about it. And she pretty much convinced me that I had to do the same coding bootcamp that she did. And coding is super hard, so kudos to you, Samantha. I learned a little bit in 6 months how to code, and I still remember that I went to an interview at UCF Bank where I work today, and they were like, "We have an opportunity for you. We want you to become a knowledge management engineer." And I literally took a job, not even knowing what that job was. It was my first job in technology, and I just say yes, and I'm actually very happy that I did.
I love that. And could I ask you both follow-up questions before I share a bit about my background?
Yes.
Go ahead. Yeah.
In both of your stories, what sticks out for me is you took some risks and you tried some new things and you weren't certain about how that would work out. So how did you approach those new situations when there was uncertainty? Because sometimes it's really hard to put ourselves in vulnerable positions where we might not feel super skilled or experienced. Ilana, I'll ask you to go first.
Oh, it was hard. I think I did a little bit of like, what are the pros and the cons? And I think I have been doing this my whole life as well, right? Like I'm actually from Brazil. I came from Brazil to the United States by myself without speaking English. So I always kind of jump on the things, not knowing where I was going. I don't think I was afraid of the risk. I knew it was there, but I don't think I was scared of starting all over again because I have done that many times. So I actually embrace it. I saw it instead of a challenge as an opportunity. I think I lost you guys for a second. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we
Yep,
can hear you.
we have you.
All right. Yeah, so that's how I saw it. I think I saw it more as an opportunity than really as a risk.
Yeah, thank you for taking that question first, by the way, Ilana. That's not an easy one, but I think, first of all, I still struggle with this, and I think that time and time again, I have proved to myself that when I'm able to be vulnerable and say, here are the areas I want to grow in, here are the areas that I'm struggling with and I need help with, I'm able to get there so much more quickly because there are so many people that are able to jump in and give you that. Sometimes it's only you're missing a small piece of information, and it's not even always you. I mean, the number of times that I've had friends message me and be like, I think I broke my Instagram account because I keep pressing this button and it's not working. I'm like, uh-oh, that's like something I did, sorry. And I think that we have a tendency sometimes to think that it's us, but that's not always the case. And I try to remind myself that, but at the same time, I think it really helps to have a community of people. And I feel really lucky that I have friends that I went to college with and studied with. And even though we're in slightly different roles in different places, I use that as a bit of a sounding board to ask my silly questions sometimes and be like, hey, is this like too ridiculous to ask? And they'll be like, no, Sam, go for it. And we'll hype each other up just to be like, look, it doesn't matter if like, what's the worst case scenario? You look like you don't know anything for a second, but then you're going to get that information and you'll be able to go that much further. And by not asking those questions and not showing that vulnerability, you're only holding yourself back. And so I've had to teach myself that when I have that stomach ache or pit of fear, to try to go and just dive in and just get it over with. But honestly, it's still something I struggle with.
Yeah, same here. And I appreciate too that you are sharing that. Like that too, in my experience, is also sort of a never-ending process. Um, and sometimes fear can be an indicator that you're on the right path. Um, and instead of retracting, I'm quite a bit older than both of you, I have been learning to push through it. But that's a process that is continuing to evolve for me. So here's my background. I have a degree from Iowa State University in wildlife biology. So I studied to be somebody who would work in the Forest Service or work out in national parks or something like that. And as life seems to happen sometimes, that didn't work out for me. But what I was really curious about is I saw this article in the newspaper. So social media was not around then. I saw this article in the newspaper about this organization that was doing online technology adventures. And they were doing explorations. And these explorers, and actually, ironically, Anne Bancroft was one of them, would take these adventures, whether that was to Antarctica or to South America or whatever the case might be, and bring classrooms along with them. And I read this article in the paper and I was super curious about that, using technology in education. And so, Samantha, you described it as one of your roles as an intersection between tech and history. I was really curious about technology, the intersection between technology and education. So I cold called this woman who this article was about, and I said, hey, I was really curious about that article that I saw. Would you be willing to meet with me? And she did. And that was um, probably more than 25 years ago. And that put me on a technology career course that I could not have imagined. And since then, I've had many different roles in technology over the last 15 or so years. Most of those have been leadership roles, so leading other teams who are developing technology and data solutions. Um, so my own technology skills are a little rusty. But in terms of leadership, that's really the path that I have been on. So again, like back to some of my opening comments about careers and technology, there's so many variations and so many ways to have a really fulfilling and evolving technology career. And I think across the three of us, we have all talked about how different those roles and experiences can be. All right, here's a next question. Would you describe, like, what's a typical day look like? What kind of things do you do? Where do you spend the majority of your time? What kind of skills do you use? Give us a flavor for what that looks like for each of you. And Sam, will you go first?
Yeah, sure. So I can give you a little bit of a sneak peek into what my day was like pre-quarantine, and then I can tell you what it's like in quarantine. So one of the perks of the, big Silicon Valley companies is really the office space. So I would say that a big portion of my day that I enjoyed was really just around food. We have amazing cafeterias, amazing snack stations, and that was like the reason I would wake up early in the morning, was to have 2 breakfasts in a row every day at work. So if you need any sort of incentive to be interested in one of those companies, not in quarantine time, the food is definitely up there. But outside of that, and this is more similar to what my agenda is now, when I get in, I usually take my mornings before. Some engineers have like different schedules, and I think there's like this notion that all engineers sleep in late, and a lot of them do. So everyone typically, at least at my company, will like respect and try not to schedule meetings before 11 a.m. And since I'm an early morning person, I use that time to actually focus and like get things that I need to get done, because after that point, it's like meetings and people messaging me all over the place, and I usually don't get anything else actual done. So in that work period, what I usually have is I'll have a list of, you know, high priority things that might be broken that I need to fix, or if I'm building out a new feature, I have a specific set of, you know, things for that feature that I want to get done at that point. And I'll try to get those things done before I start getting all the messages, so I have that focus block. And then before quarantine, me and my teammates, like all the engineers on my team, we'd go get lunch every day. My team would also play Super Smash Bros, which I am really, really bad at. But luckily, I have 2 other female engineers on my team who are incredible at it. So I didn't have to be the stereotypical girl that was bad at video games. I was just one of many people, and I happened to be the one that was really bad at video games. So yeah, but that's basically what my day is. I spend a bunch of time with product managers, designers, data scientists to think through not just how do we build this, but what are we building and why are we building this, and how are we going to understand if we are actually building something to solve the problem that we see. And that's one of the parts of the job that I really love, and especially when we get to do research with users and ask them questions about what they're doing. And I think sometimes there's a misconception that, I definitely had this misconception, and I think it can be whatever you want, but I think I was really scared of being an engineer because I pictured it as being alone in a dark room by myself, which quite frankly, in quarantine, I basically am most of the time, but I still get to have lots of meetings with people, and I get to be involved with so much of the strategic thinking and product development and feature development. And working on a product that I personally use so much, like Instagram, is really fun because I'm able to build things that I personally want to use.
That is great. So you mentioned that you love the food, and yeah, what's another thing that you really love about your job?
I mean, no question, it's the people I work with. I'm so constantly impressed by the people that I get to work with, because they're so knowledgeable, so curious. And what I love about working at Instagram is really that there's this culture of education and collaboration. And so if anyone has a question, it is very much expected to drop everything and like go and make sure everyone understands what's going on, which is amazing. And that's why I have my work block before 11 a.m. because after that, who knows what could happen. But it's also amazing because you're working with people that are so knowledgeable, people that have created the technologies that you're using. And in terms of being in an environment where you're learning, I love being able to work with other people that are so passionate and also so hungry to learn, but also want to teach. And so that growth relationship is something I love.
Excellent. Thank you. And what's something that you don't get super excited about?
That's a good question. Honestly, some bug fixes are just like really tedious, and then all of a sudden you have too many, and you're like, I want to get the fun work done. I don't want to do this stuff. And yeah, I would say that's not fun. Okay. But you're like, okay, someone has to do this at some point. And our teams are actually pretty small, and I'm like, look, I'm not going to ask someone else to do this work if I'm not willing to do it. So I think that part of the mentality is we'll all take a little bit of the stuff that's not so fun, because we know that for the people that end up running into that bug, that's a really bad experience. Like they're like, oh, I'm trying to message my friend and I can't. I'm like, uh-oh, it's because I'm lazy.
So it sounds like you're always keeping your users and your client, your user
Totally.
base in mind.
Yeah, and I think it's really easy because I work on such a product-facing feature. But even when I used to work on more of a developer-facing feature, which was just a tool for visualizing how the data goes from your phone to our different data tables, and that was used by engineers just to debug when they were basically seeing metrics or measurements missing. Even in that situation, I think what's really amazing about the work throughout the whole company is it's always focused around what problem are you solving. And even that internal visualization is really focused on how can you help engineers do their jobs in a better, less painful way, so that when they get something that's broken, they're able to solve it more quickly. And I think that just having that mindset and constantly being focused on why we're doing this, why are we solving this problem, why does it matter, helps even when you have some of the yucky stuff to do and you're like, oh, it still helps you be like, okay, yes, this is still important, even though it feels like something that's less exciting right now.
Ilana, how about you? Like, what's a typical day look like for you? And maybe give a sense of that, as well as something that you get really excited about, and then something that you're not so excited about too.
Oh, my work is a little bit different than Samantha's. I think I want to move to where she's living now.
Oh my gosh, please, I'll refer you anytime.
Yes, I think Instagram is very different from GCF Bank. Not to say that GCF Bank is not great, it is fantastic. But my day, I would say it does not start at 11 a.m. I usually have meetings starting at 8:30 in the morning, and sometimes I'll have meetings until 5 p.m. I'll say that I probably have about 8 to 9 meetings a day. So it's definitely busy, and I have to squeeze work in between. So sometimes I have small blocks of 20 minutes where I actually can get some work started and done. Um, Knowledge management, the easy way to explain is like, I guess I'll say I get information in the hands of people when they need that information. Um, it's a very cool job, but it's also very challenging, I'll say. So for two reasons. So let's say to give people a sense of what knowledge management is I always say, like, if you wanna, let's say something on your iPhone breaks and you can fix it, you're like, let me visit Apple website to figure out what's happening to my phone. Then you're gonna go to Apple search bar and you're gonna say, my phone is not turning on. And then they're gonna provide you some documentation saying, hey, one, try this, two, try this. And you're gonna follow those steps. So my job at my organization is to make sure that documentation is accurate. So when the users need, they know where it is located and how to use it. So when Samantha builds the stuff, she should be the person providing us with the right information. So if our user ever have any problems, we know how to troubleshoot that information. So that's kind of what knowledge management is. I absolutely love it. It's connected with what I love most, which is communication. So my job does connect technology and communication. So I think it was the right thing to me. Most of what I do a lot in the day too on my meetings is a lot of what Samantha mentioned too, is problem solving. I help teams to think through their processes, like how are they doing something, why are they doing something in a way, and I help them optimize their work. Like, is there a different way that we can do this that is simpler, that is faster, that is better? So a lot of my day consists of that, and I think that's the thing I like most. I love problem solving, and technology has a lot of problems. So I enjoy doing that. Every day is something different. So I love that, but that sometimes is also the thing that I don't like. Sometimes, some days you just want things to work. You're like, I don't want to solve any problem today. Today, I just want things to work. And reality and technologies, they do break all the time. So it's what I like, but sometimes it's what I dislike as well.
And that is the reality of working in that space, Ilana. I have a
Yes.
similar experience. So what I really love about the roles that I gravitate toward in technology are big, messy organizational problems. So either a team is not performing, or we have a big business initiative that we need to go after and we're not sure how we're going to do it. And what I'm doing right now is, so I work for a big multinational company that moves, grows, and supplies food all across the globe. We do business in more than 70 countries. We speak across the company more than 40 languages. And so the size and scale and scope of Cargill, it's been around for 150 years, one of the biggest privately held companies. And so it's very large, very expansive. And the role that I have right now is establishing a new team within Cargill that's going to be focused completely on enabling better decisions, business decisions through data. And Cargill has not done this before. So it's a brand new organization in a very large, expansive team. And so I love that kind of work. It's so many problems to solve, but also that can be the challenge of the work too. Because
Am
it's
I allowed
really
to
hard.
ask? Oh, sorry. I was going to say, am I allowed
Yeah,
to ask you a question?
of course.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just got
No,
excited.
yeah, it's all good.
If you're creating this first data decision-based team within this huge, long existing company, my instinct is there's so much to do. There's so many opportunities, and I know that I could just dive in and end up with not such clarity. How are you thinking about where to start or how to prioritize? I mean, in terms of how large you say this, or like, and the scope, it seems like there's so much you can do, and probably so much data you have might need to be like, formatted and cleaned up. There might be like a whole process, who knows? But yeah.
Yes, all of those things, because we have like, let's say 20, 25, 30 years of system accumulation, technology accumulation that all has data within it. So we are trying to unravel decades of technology and system and process. It is not a short-term fix. So one of the things I think, like, your question is really interesting, Sam, because I've been in these kinds of roles for quite some time in different organizations, but I always gravitate toward teams that are going through big transformations. And one of the things that is really important, and both of you spoke to that, is the role of people and communication in the work that you do, and collaboration. Those are the words that both of you used. And that is really true in the role that I have. So I spend a lot of time talking with people, asking questions, listening to what they have to say and what they don't say, watching the organizational dynamics in order to pick up clues that help us identify patterns. So I'm a pattern finder, except my patterns tend to be around people, organizational structure, big business problems, obstacles, and how do we influence and persuade an organization to move in a different way. So the technology background that I have has made me do what I do now, even though the application of problem solving, bug fixing, code fixes, all of that stuff is just now applied in different and maybe more, in my current role, more expansive ways. But the mindset is the same. What's the problem? What's the opportunity? And how do we go to figure out how to solve it?
That's so cool. I want to be able to do that one day. I'm like, this is so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And again, like when I started in my career 20 years ago, never ever would have imagined that I'd be doing what I do. I lead a team of about 150 people all over the globe, in China, in Bulgaria, in Brazil, in Argentina, and never would I have imagined that that's what I would have done when I started out this technology career. And that, again, is just such a cool thing about having a role in technology. So all of that is possible. So what kind of skills do you both think that are really important in the roles that you have? And what has been a surprise about that? And what has just come up organically for you? And like what I'm curious about is, like, both of you have had evolving experiences. And what do you think some of those foundational skills and competencies are that have enabled you to now do what you're doing now? Ilana, I would love for you to go first.
Um, so I think when I started at GCF, like every time I went to a meeting, I think I was so worried about not knowing the technology that was like so big. I was like, I gotta be better at coding. I gotta be better at understanding networking. And I think I quickly realized that the skills that are most important, at least for the work I do, are actually my communication skills. I am so grateful for my bachelor degree right now, because I think technology, sometimes we forget that actually humans are behind the technology, right? So I think the communications skills have helped me a lot with that. There's a lot that go with knowledge and information, and how the user is going to receive that information, and how they're going to see it, and where they're going to see it, and why they don't understand. So I think communications help me a lot with that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, because so I studied computer science in college, and I mean, at least I had thought if you're studying it in college, you should be prepared when you get into the workforce. But the type of stuff I was studying in class was very different from what I was actually doing in my day-to-day job. My classes were much more theoretical and theory-based, which was really helpful in terms of helping me understand deeply why we make decisions, why we use certain systems, what the best possible way to do things is. But in reality, you can't always do the most best, you can't always implement the most amazing optimal solution, because it might take forever, and it might be just ridiculously expensive and not actually create the right experience that you're going for. So definitely learning. One of the other skills that I think I had more in high school, lost in college, and have had to rediscover in some ways, is being able to have some amount of stubbornness or confidence in pushing an idea forward. I think in high school, I was probably a little bit too, full of myself in my head. I mean, hopefully not really, but a little bit. And I was like, okay, cool. If I have an idea, we should be able to just try it out. And in college, I got there and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, everyone here is crazy smart. I am just gonna, chill out in the back and see what happens. And I think that carried over as I started working full time, but I realized that whatever experiences or insights you have, I sometimes tended to think that everyone else must see this and they must just not be doing it for a very particular reason. And over time, I realized that sometimes people don't make those same connections. The way that Alana said, having those communication skills and being able to bridge the gaps between the knowledge systems and the people that need it is like equally, if not more important than just understanding the systems, because if you understand the system but have no idea where it's needed or what the applications are, like, it's kind of pointless. So I think that that is a skill that I underestimated and didn't think would matter. I don't know if that counts as a skill, but more of like a thing to remember, that your perspective and your observations can be very valuable and you shouldn't necessarily take them for granted.
I 100% agree with that. And I'm still practicing that, because when I get into different roles, different opportunities, different people, different leaders, that can still be, for me, an intimidating process to surface. So I love that you called it out. And there's an element of courage to that, certainly, but also tenacity and a lot of self-awareness too. And so I think that's a great call out. And that too is a form of curiosity that can be applied in all sorts of situations.
I just want to check in. Believe it
Yeah,
or not, time is flying. And this conversation has been so insightful just to hear the diversity of experience, but the thread of, technology really is applicable in every industry. And to hear your experiences, so far, it's been really cool as a tech lover, but total non-STEM person. Like, I'm so on the opposite spectrum of STEM.
Do not sell yourself short, okay? Here we don't undersell ourselves.
Thank you. So I'll say, Jackie, maybe we have time for one more question, and then we do have 2 questions from the audience. And if anyone else has questions, I want to encourage you to type it in the chat box so that we can get to it. Thank
right.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the check-in, Donnie. So what are your favorite technologies? What do you like to use, and what do you spend the most of your time with, and how do you get enjoyment from that? Sam, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, sure. I can start out. I mean, so I use Instagram all day. I mean, that counts as a technology.
Yeah.
And I spend a lot of my time writing in Objective-C, which is a programming language for writing apps on iPhones. There is a newer version of that language called Swift, but again, due to some of what Jackie, you discussed of like that tech debt and legacy code, it can be sometimes difficult to move on to the newest coding languages or machines, so we're getting there. And the other thing that I wanted to just call out, and that might be fun if other people want to explore, is I've been recently playing around with this website called Bubble, and it allows you to build your own websites with like click and drag, but it also tries to teach you some programmatic skills along the way. And I, on a probably very different scale, I think a bit about like education and what resources would I have loved to see earlier in my life to be able to be like, hey, Sam, like coding's a thing, without scaring me off from it. And so I'm constantly trying to play with new toys, new educational tools, try them out, ask, my friends' siblings, whoever, to try them out and be like, hey, is this intuitive? Because I also acknowledge that I've probably been in tech just long enough, even though it doesn't feel like it, to have almost too much knowledge to really be able to gut check if this is actually a helpful beginner resource or not. So yeah.
All right, I'm gonna check out Bubble. I've not heard of that
Yeah,
before.
check it out, please.
All right. Ilana, how about you?
That's actually a really hard question for me.
I
I
know,
don't
this is an
spend
easy
that
one
much
for me.
time in technology itself. I'll tell Samantha I spent some time on Instagram. I recently signed up to TikTok, so I'm still learning that one.
Okay.
I think I spend most of my time really like I'm a very visual person. So for technology, I need the way I learn, I need to see it. So anything that is helpful as in form of video, that's what I enjoy most because I am visual. So I'll say that for me, like just old Udemy or YouTube videos, that's kind of like usually what I navigate for to learn more about technology itself, just because it's easier for me to understand. But I do spend less time in technology than Samantha does. I think I read more about like overall, like about knowledge management, change management, processes, etc.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Donnie, back to you.
Awesome. And we have questions rolling into the chat. So thanks everyone for using that feature of Zoom. So the first question is, what advice would you give for women and girls who are interested in going into tech, especially with such a fast changing pace and environment?
Is it me?
Let's go with Alana first.
All right. I would say if I was going to give even for myself an advice when I first started my career in tech, I would say ignore everybody's opinions of tech. I'll say that would be my first advice, because even if I had listened to my husband, I wouldn't be in tech today. 2 years ago, when I told him, he's like, you know what, I'm going to do a coding boot camp and I'm going to change careers. He was the first person to oppose it. He was like, you like to communicate and you love people, and technology is not that. You're not going to do this, and go to some human resources classes or something like that. So I had to push through that, to literally ignore people's advice. So I'll say my first advice to you is ignore people's advices. I think you have to follow your instinct. And if you think that it's for you, then go for it. And something that Samantha mentioned before too is like build your confidence. I think I had to work a lot on that as well. When I first started in tech, I was sitting in rooms with a lot of people that didn't look like me, right? I am a woman. We know that women are minority in technology, but I'm also from another country. So a lot of times I will be afraid of speaking up or giving an idea. So I think I actually missed a lot of opportunities there. So I had to build a lot of confidence to be able to speak up. So say that's the two things I'll leave is like ignore advices, actually get into tech, and then work to build your confidence.
Yeah, I plus one to everything you just said. And I also want to say that where you're able to just really try to embrace your peers, because I think whether it's your classmates or your coworkers, those can be some of the most valuable mentors, especially if they are at the same stage as you or even just a step ahead. I know sometimes we have a tendency to want to talk to just like the most senior people in the world, which is amazing and inspiring. But sometimes talking to someone that's just one step ahead of you can help you see a path for yourself. And the other thing I will say is having a sense of whether or not it's deserved entitlement, because as Alana said, like I am a white woman in tech and I'm still a minority, but I think we need more Black women in tech. We need more, people with different representations that aren't represented enough in the tech industry. And I think there's a lot that needs to change to make that happen. But I would say if you are even curious about it, like feel free to reach out to me directly. I can like have Donnie share my contact information. And if you want just at least someone to say you are not alone, I can tell you I've made probably at least every mistake you can think of up to this point, and I'm only like 3 years into my career. So yeah, just like don't let any mistake you make slow you down. You got this. Have a sense of entitlement that, isn't based on what reality. It's fine. Men do it all the time.
Thank you both. And I don't know, Jackie, did you want to share?
The first thing that came to my mind is like make connections. Reach out to people and learn from them. I think a thread again through all three of our stories is we got into technology because either somebody said, hey, you should get into technology, or we talked to people. Or, I threw a newspaper article, which might be the equivalent of a DM right now, like there's just lots of opportunities and people are so open and willing to share their experiences and to help others. So make connections. And then the other, I wrote down, Samantha, almost what you said, don't let obstacles get in your way. Like if you run into a roadblock, then find another way around it. Ask for help. And that's why those connections can be so important and valuable, because people will help you figure out over the obstacles.
Thank you. So powerful and applicable across industry, such great just professional advice in general. And the next question, this question was actually asked twice in different forms, so I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about this, and then we'll do one more question after that. In the next year, what is a major professional or developmental goal that you have? And kind of connected to that is, what are you most proud of in your career so far? Sam, we'll go with you first.
Oh, yeah. Okay, the what are you most proud of in your career so far that's a real, that's a hard one. I don't know. And I think that might be something that is almost a reminder that I should maybe reflect on that more, so that in those moments of insecurity, I can be like, okay, I've done this thing before. I know I can do it. So maybe one thing was I was very excited when I rebuilt the Instagram location pages, because it was something that I could point to concretely and say, look, I did this, and that's awesome. What was the other part of the question? I forgot, sorry.
It's okay. The other question is, what is a major professional goal that you have
Oh, yeah.
in the next year? So kind of short term.
Yeah, so in the next year, I am trying to move to be a senior engineer within like the company. And it's something that I'm working on, a bit of a stretch goal, have some growth areas. So we'll see, but just really focused on going deep and getting better at programming.
Thank you.
Oh, hi, I'm Samantha. I think proud of is a very hard one. I actually will say what Jackie mentioned before. I think I'm mostly proud of the connections I made actually for the work that I do with knowledge management and information and getting information, moving information from one place to another. I did have to build a lot of connections at UCF. You have when you rely on someone's information, they have to kind of like you to give you that information. So I think I was lucky enough, and I think I worked really hard to build those connections. So I think I'm very proud of that. As goal, I'm actually don't even know. I think I'm in a little bit of a transition in my career right now. I am learning a lot about product ownership, and I'm really excited about it. I like it. So I think my goal will be to kind of dig a little bit deeper into the learning more about product ownership, and maybe that will be the next move in my career.
Thank you. And then Jackie?
So something that I am proud of. I'm proud of a lot of things that I have done. Probably the thing that I'm most proud of is the teams that I have built and the people that I have led, and watching them be successful. And so what does that mean for my next career goal? My next career goal is to do more of that. So, I'm really passionate about seeing people be successful and realize their potential. And I want to, over time, do less technology and process and all that stuff, and more focus on the people side of my world.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing those goals and really just illustrating the process of advancing as a professional at different stages. And so we're going to sort of shift into the closing moment now. We want to respect your time. And speaking of technology, I have a commercial to show you for several programs that we have coming up at ABF. And next week, August 5th, we have a program called Practice What's Next, First Love Yourself. One of the themes of the conversation tonight was all about self-confidence. And we're working with a woman named Lisa Von Ahn, who used to be on the US kickboxing team. She's an incredible person, and she's going to be facilitating several programs around self-love, addressing fear. We talked a little bit about that tonight. And then just being a source for positive change. So this commercial is super short. It is 60 seconds long. And I'm gonna share my screen so you can see it. And then we'll do our survey and our thank you for our guest. So here goes the commercial. Can you guys see my screen? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, it's super short. Speaking of technology, I created this commercial. My name is Lisa Van Ahn, and I have dedicated the last 20 years of my life to becoming a person who loves myself and protects myself in the world. It began for me when I started kickboxing, and I spent a number of years as a fighter, an athlete on the US kickboxing team, a professional boxer in Las Vegas. And finally, since I've retired
from the fighting scene. I've moved into working with young women, teaching them how to love themselves and protect themselves, to live confidently and powerfully and create positive change in their worlds.
Okay, so that is our commercial from Lisa Von Ahn, who's incredible. I'm so excited about the programming, and it's all free of charge. You have to be in at least fourth grade.
I mean, like,
oh, sorry.
I think he's probably generally true. Look, the
YouTube
reality
is still
is,
playing. 1
You
second.
think Warren is generally right?
no, I think Mark's.
That's one of those new features of YouTube, the continuous play option. You have to remember to turn it off. So anywho, I will include that link in our follow-up email that we send. Please forward it to young women, high school, college age that could benefit. There's also movement involved. So Lisa will be doing dance, yoga, and kickboxing throughout the duration of her time with us. And then now I'm going to put the link, the post-event survey link, into the chat. So please click that link and take a few seconds to let us know about your experience today. It's super quick, shouldn't take long. And I want to thank Alana and Samantha and Jackie for just being so, my friend came up with this term, vulnerageous, which basically means just being transparent, being courageous, and being vulnerable. I so appreciate that. I'm sure that all of our guests and attendees appreciated that as well. And hopefully this will be the first of many opportunities for us to collaborate, because this was phenomenal. Any last words? And hopefully everyone is clicking that Survey Monkey link right now to take that survey. We'll also email it out. It really helps us. It helps us to understand how what we're doing is working, how we can improve and get better. And we really, really need that feedback. So please do that. And then any last words from our panelist and moderator?
I would say I encourage more women to join technology. We definitely need more female leaders. I'm actually really happy that at GCF I have a lot of female leaders, and that's really empowering me a lot, because they are there to kind of walk me through things and all the courage that you're going to need for sure, and the confidence. They help you build that. So I'll say, yes, join technology, because we need more women.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm a director of a program called Facebook University, where we have an internship that's specifically for underrepresented people in tech. And it's a program to help you after you've taken just an initial coding class, to try to help you transition into like a full 12-week internship, and then ultimately, ideally, like make it a career, or at least have the experience. So I would say message at least one person that you're inspired by, because, you know, as Jackie shared, you never know where it can take you. And also, worst case, they don't respond. So, you know, why not? And thank you so much for having me here. This is amazing. I love this community. And Donnie, this is awesome. Thank you for running this event. And Alana and Jackie, I'm so inspired by both of you.
Same.
Thank you. Just a big underscore of thanks for all of you. And it's been delightful to hear your stories. Thank you for sharing.